Good evening, everyone. Good evening. All right. Well, my name is Anthony Drummond. I am going to be chairing this Borough Board meeting in place of our Deputy Borough President, Ingrid Lewis Martin. So I would like to welcome everyone here and this evening for the meeting. On the agenda tonight, we're going to have a presentation from the New York State Attorney General's office regarding services provided by the Brooklyn Regional Office, as well as a presentation by NYC Mesh regarding low and no-cost internet service that they provide throughout New York City. So those are going to be our two items on the agenda today. And so before we get started, I'll have Karen do the roll call.
Community Board 1, Community Board 2, Community Board 3,
Here.
Community Board 4,
Present.
Community Board 5, Community Board 6, Community Board 7,
Present.
Community Board 8, Community Board 9, Community Board 10, Community Board 11,
Here.
Community Board 12, Community Board 13, Community Board 14,
Here.
Community Board 15, Community Board 16, Community Board 17,
Oh, here.
Community Board 18. Councilmember Barron, Councilmember Cornegie, Councilmember Cumbo, Councilmember Deutsch, Councilmember Espinal, Councilmember Eugene, Councilmember Brannon, Councilmember Yeager, Councilmember Lander, Councilmember Levin,
Here.
Councilmember Mizell,
Here.
Councilmember Alika Ampry Samuel, Councilmember Carlos Menchaca, Councilmember Antonio Manoso, Councilmember Traeger, and Board President.
Here. Okay, so it looks like we have a quorum, so this is great. All right, so before we move on to our presentation, I believe everyone should have a copy of the minutes that have been circulated. If you guys have a chance to review that over, I'll give you guys about a couple of minutes to do a quick review. And then after that, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion. Okay,
Second motion, Richard Flateau, Community Board 3.
okay, it's been moved by 15, second by Community Board 3. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Abstentions? All right, minutes are one abstention. All right, we have one abstention. All right, the minutes are approved. Okay. So for our first item tonight is our presentation from the New York State Attorney General's office regarding services provided in Brooklyn from their regional office. And we have Michael Barbosa, correct? Our Assistant Attorney General in charge from the Attorney General's office will be giving a presentation. So Mr. Barbosa, there's Mike, take it away.
Good evening, and thank you on behalf of our Attorney General, Letitia James. It's an honor to be here today. Basically, I'm just here to talk about all of the different services that our Brooklyn Regional Office and the entire Attorney General's office can provide. Many times I'm talking to the crowd, but it's very important for us to always reiterate the various services that the Attorney General's office can provide. Many times in the media, we hear about the big cases, but the smaller ones, we don't hear as much. So, as you know, our Attorney General is the people's attorney on behalf of the entire state of New York, and we represent all the counties in New York. My regional office, we're located in the Shirley Chisholm State Office Building, 55 Hanson Place. We're on the 10th floor, room 1080. and we accept walk-ins. We're open from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. We have a community voluntary mediation program where we mediate disputes between individuals and businesses, between tenants and landlords, and we also investigate and prosecute patterns or practices of repeated fraud or illegality. Now, one of the things that we encounter many times is even people who work for the Attorney General's office, or even people who are educated about various forms of different government, sometimes mixes the different services that the Attorney General's office can provide with the district attorney's office or a different agency. So it's always important for us to talk about what authority we have in order to initiate different allegations of fraud or illegality. And our authority is derived from New York Executive Law 6312. And basically, we have broad authority whenever we see a violation of local, city violations, state law, or federal law. And as Attorney General, we have a discretion to investigate. And we don't represent individual complaints or individual clients, but we do represent the people of the state of New York. But one of the most important things that we get from our individual complaints is most of our individual complaints lead to other ones. So we certainly encourage complaints. And many times people in the community don't initiate any complaints or send anything in writing because they don't think anything is going to happen. But just let you know, of course, you all know our Attorney General in Brooklyn is our home. And every county is important. And it's important for us to be able to look at the different complaints and follow wherever they go. Some of our statutory power include subpoena power. We can initiate injunctions to stop bad behavior, and we can also bring people in to testify under oath if we have a pattern or practice of bad behavior. We have a very close relationship with the district attorney's offices. The district attorney's office has primary authority over all criminal matters. We have limited criminal authority under certain statutory provisions. So, for instance, under executive law, there are certain sections where we have primary authority to represent executive state offices, because we represent the entire state of New York. And as you know, the Attorney General serves as a special prosecutor for unarmed civilians who are killed by police officers. But that was by an executive order. That was, of course, very, we're one of we're the only state in the entire United States to be able to have that type of power. So it's important for us to be able to let the community know what our limited authority is, but our other types of criminal prosecutions, the typical ones we work on are financial crimes. So we have a specific criminal enforcement and financial crimes unit. We have organized crime task force where there are various criminal activities across counties and across states. And we also have our Medicaid fraud unit that focuses on medical fraud crimes, crimes involving the elderly and abuse. Most of the relief that we obtain are normally settlements through informal assurances of discontinuance or court-ordered settlements or litigation, basically. And all of our focus is always restitution to our consumers. And we seek penalties to stop the bad behavior and also to deter other scam artists to continue their work that happens. And of course, criminal convictions and jail time. So outreach. We try to do as much outreach as we can and our mandate is to go to every single, every single community district and let the community know about the different services that we provide, and to take complaints, and to give complaints and show the community how to initiate these different complaints, and publicizing our different settlements and litigation. Two of our most important or popular presentations that we kind of go on a road for are our presentations dealing with seniors, where we go to different community centers and different senior centers, and we educate seniors and advocates about different ways to protect themselves. Because many times we found they are the most vulnerable, and we have materials here that outlines many of the different helpful information in terms of protecting seniors and protecting everyone else. I mean, it's helpful information for everyone. And also about internet safety. So we do an internet safety presentation for adults, and also we go through schools to talk about internet safety for children in different schools. So I just wanted to just outline some of the different important things to learn from our Smart Seniors presentations, and basically the theme is to stay safe, take control, and fight back. So, as I said, one of the problems that we have is we don't receive many complaints where the problems happen. There was a study that said 1 in 25 complaints are made for fraud abuse against the elderly, fraud and abuse. And in terms of that, I think in Brooklyn is even worse. Some of the common schemes are, the sweepstakes. I mean, it's the oldest scam in the world, but it still works, basically. And the way the internet works, people think that they've won a Canadian lottery or some sort of lottery in Africa, and you haven't even applied for the lottery. But it ties to, people's need for some type of enjoyment, or it's just really important to continue to let people know about the sweepstakes stand, because there's still many victims. Fake check scams. I don't know how many people check their mail or their junk mail, but there's always tons of fake checks with your name, and you can cash that check. Believe it or not, there are still people that go to the bank and they cash it in their bank, and then lo and behold, there are funds that are taken out of their account after that information is deposited in their account. And there's the famous grandparent scam. Another old and very effective scam where a grandparent receives calls late at night normally that a family member is in danger and they need help, and it's an emergency and they need money. It's different types of variations. There may be a person that's on the phone saying that they represent them as their lawyer, or that the person is in the hospital, or that the person has been arrested and they need bail, and you need to go to a particular location. Now the thing is gift cards or Apple cards or whatever. It's different variations of a number of different scams. One of the important things is every time I do, our office does these types of presentations, there's always 1 or 2 people who know other folks who've been victims of these scams. And sometimes, again, they haven't made a complaint with our office or mostly any other offices because they think it's too late, because the money's already taken, or because they don't think that anything's going to change. But it's also important for us to try to continue to do our investigations, and we need complaints. So another important thing is how do people protect themselves? So in our presentations, we talk about how they can protect their identity and how to not accept these robocalls, how to be put on a do not call list, and how to monitor that they're still on a do not call list if it expires. And there's information there in order to, inform your constituents and relatives how they can protect themselves, either through direct mail, not receiving solicitations, not receiving discounts if you, want to be on this particular mailing list, or if you've purchased a particular product. There's various ways that your information is sold. And in terms of internet safety, there's so many different ways that the internet has evolved, and there's more and more and more scams in effective ways. And some of the tips that we talk about, of course, is protecting your personal identifier information, your date of birth, your driver's license, your social security number, your credit card. There will be individuals who call, okay, Mr. Johnson, we're calling regarding an account discrepancy, and we needed to verify certain information. And I know your date of birth is March 7th. Is that 1952? Oh no, it's 1953. It's not 1952. Or it'll be one number off. Many people know that public records, there's so much information that you can obtain about an individual and just basically doing a regular internet search on social media to find out where a person lives, on public records to find out their exact address, arrest reports, all of these different companies that sell information to try to obtain criminal background checks, but then they'll have the person's date of birth and their age and all of their social security numbers except the last 3 or 4 digits. So it's just important to try to protect the information that you have. So our office also works with different groups to try to protect their information in terms of shredding and in terms of protecting information online and in terms of communicating over the phone. And of course, there's a free credit report every year. Many times we speak to constituents who don't want to obtain credit reports because they're like, well, it's gonna lower my credit rating. There's a free credit report every year, and it will not lower your credit rating. And there's different credit nonprofits that can help individuals to obtain credit reports. You don't have to pay for them. Sometimes there's for-profit groups that do that, and other scam artists or scam organizations that try to obtain that information. So we also, in our presentations, talk about the different steps that you need to do if you've been a victim of identity theft. If you are receiving credit cards, if you're receiving bills, is to contact all of the 3 major credit reporting agencies to issue a fraud alert, your credit card companies, and get copies to try to contest the information that's on the credit reports. In addition, it's very important to make a formal complaint, not even just with our office, but with the Federal Trade Commission that handles identity theft issues. And in the information, we have their website and a phone number so that individuals can file, it's called a FTC affidavit. And you use that affidavit to take it to the police department to file a police report. And along with the FTC affidavit and the police report, that would be information that can have information that's on your credit report removed or listed as fraud, so it can be removed. So that information is here. Another aspect of our presentations talks about charitable giving. Many people in our communities are so giving, even with not having much. I remember my grandmother would always give whenever she received certain notices in the mail. And it's important to know if the charity is legitimate. know what programs and whether or not the donations that you provide are going to go to that charity, and know if it's registered. All charitable organizations have to be registered with the New York State Attorney General's office, and we have our website here specifically where you can look up the charitable nonprofit organizations to see their annual reports, to see the amount of money that they give to charities, and all you have to do is search with the name. It's basically, you can type in any nonprofit and see the financial reports, and if it's not there, then that's a red flag. Many times we also see, especially with the internet and how confusing it is, there'll be legitimate charities and scam charities that look exactly like a legitimate charity, and it's not, and it's very difficult to determine. So it's always really important not to give donations over the phone, give any personal identifiable information over the phone as well. So, I just wanted to let you know about some of our services. We are continuing to investigate fraud and illegality, and our number is here for our complaints. We have our complaint forms here as well, so you can take to your different constituents. It's also online, and our 1-800 number to issue complaints to. It's 1-800-771-7755. Thank you for allowing me to share.
All right. Thank you, Michael. All right, I'll open up to any questions. CB 14.
Ed Powell, Community Board 14. Does your office have the resources to present at our individual community boards and precinct councils and so forth?
Yes, we do.
And how do we go about securing that?
Well, we have our community liaison in the back, and I can also provide information to you in terms of setting that up.
Thank you.
But yes, we definitely want to take this on the road and just send as much information to the community as we can.
Teresa Scavro, Community Board 15.
Teresa?
Way back.
Teresa, sorry. Use the microphone so we can make sure to record.
In the beginning of your presentation, you said you don't handle individual cases?
We don't represent individual
Okay.
clients.
John Smith comes to your office. He's been scammed by these guys. Recently, I got a dozen calls, Galveston, Texas. We're calling from the Social Security Administration. They sound extremely professional. It's a number, and it comes up Galveston, Texas, that my Social Security number is being used in a liability case. Call this toll-free number for more information. Now, I know better. Most people will pick up the phone. So if someone comes to you that they have been scammed by that, you would not take that and run with it?
No, maybe let me just be more clear. We would take the information, we would represent him along with other individuals when we see a pattern or practice of behavior, and that from what you describe as a pattern or practice of behavior. However, those cases, because we represent individuals, sometimes the immediacy of that individual complainant is not in line with the investigation that we're conducting. So it's important for constituents to be aware that even though they submit a complaint with our office and they think that nothing's happening, the investigation is ongoing. It's a confidential investigation as well. However, sometimes, many times our, constituents are in crisis mode. They're in foreclosure or, certain things that they need immediate attention for, which is the reason why we have relationships with many different legal service organizations that can provide direct representation for that individual.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I'm going to work around. I'll come back to you. Go ahead.
How you doing? Joshua Brown, CB4. Can you speak about any past or upcoming programs targeting the issue of deed fraud, specifically targeting seniors here in Brooklyn? Because this is a common ongoing issue that's been going on for several years, and it keeps getting worse. So could you speak about what education or what steps that these people should take to ensure that they can recoup their home?
Yes, great question. So housing is a huge priority for our Attorney General, and we have always worked on housing issues, homeowner issues, and deed theft issues. However, we've had even more resources to try to devote to this problem, especially for so many vulnerable communities, particularly in Brooklyn. So one of the things that we are doing now is, I mean, we've had a few cases where we have arrested and charged individuals who are engaging in deed theft, either civilly or criminally, because it's involved a pattern or practice of behavior, and it's a number of different individuals in Brooklyn or in Queens or in Long Island or in the Bronx or even in other counties upstate and downstate. One of the things that we're also working on, that our office is working on, is in terms of working with community groups that represent these individuals in foreclosure or private organizations to try to partner with information that might be helpful, such as learning about surrogates court when a person passes away and how a deed is transferred to a family member, or information in terms of how to understand the deed information that is filed in the New York City Registry in ACRIS. It's an online form. And many times when individuals come to our office, we can print out, if they own a particular property, the information that's listed, in terms of, what deeds are filed, and now indicate who, if there's something that's been improper, and the different steps that they need to take to try to find representation to either contest information that's in that deed. I mean, it's very antiquated and complicated and confusing for even the most educated person. And the lack of oversight in terms of whether or not a deed is accurate or fraudulent has not been in line with the law. Are you required to have a lawyer when these deeds are filed? If the information is notarized and the form is correct, that might be the only thing that the New York City Registry has to do, unless a complaint is filed by an individual. So what we're working with New Yorkers to do is to try to understand what a deed looks like, how to initiate a transfer, how to obtain documents, and how to protect yourself. So yeah, we're working diligently to try to work with different community groups. Sure.
So in the event that we have a resident whose deed was stolen, what is the first step that they should have to take, aside from contacting our DA in relation to the AG's office?
Well, there's a way to issue a complaint with the sheriff's office if a deed is improper, and they investigate as well, and along with the district attorney's office if they file a complaint against, if they can identify the individuals. Many times what we found is it's a LLC or it's a corporation, and trying to obtain that information from the New York State Department of State and how that form of business was formed. So those are all issues that we try to educate the community to obtain, and also how our investigations are ongoing to try to stop this problem, because it's rampant, and we know, and we catch, when we work on it, we catch individuals, but it's like throwing water in a bucket. Thanks.
Joy? Yeah.
Hello. I'm Joy Simmons from the Office of Councilmember Inez Barron.
Hi.
Hello. So I had a question with regard to the internet. So a family member and I was, putting in her information, her name, just to see kind of like what comes up. And to our horror, what came up first was her address, but then also how much she paid for her house, and a lot of other information regarding her real estate transactions and things like that. So my question is, I do know that this is public information. But for it to be the first thing that pops up as opposed to having to have someone go, say, to a courthouse and get the information, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that might be a little different. I mean, certain things is public information, but for that's the first thing that comes up when you put in someone's name. So is there anything that your office can do or might be doing, or anything with regard to Google and what information is related to identity theft and legitimately just stop from being put out on Google, or is it just anything kind of goes, and even they can pull from, it might have been like the title company or something like that just put it out there, but should they be allowed to do that? So are there any initiatives to look into that? Just kind of,
That certainly would be something. We have an internet bureau that focuses on identity theft and the ways people are scammed via the internet. So it might be something for us. It's certainly something for us to look into.
Okay, so maybe I'll send something in writing and just bring that to their attention, because maybe that could be an initiative or something in terms of what Google and what these search engines can kind of put out there or allow to come up. Thank you.
No, absolutely. It's definitely something of concern for us.
Okay. Yep. And then,
Hi, I'm Rachel Freeman from Community Board 6. You had said that a lot of people don't file because with the scams, the internet scams, because they don't think that there's anything that can be done. It's already happened and it's passed. How long, what is the length of time that they have to bring something to the Attorney General's office?
Well, it depends on the particular crimes, but sometimes it's 3 years or sometimes it's 6 years, depending upon what types of crimes that occur. So that's why it's important. Like sometimes we receive complaints, and this happened to me 10 years ago. And sometimes there's ways that we can creatively see if there's a continuing pattern of behavior against a particular group of people, but it's very difficult. So that's why it's important for us to try to get as many written complaints as possible. And even if it's old, sometimes you can get certain relief, equitable relief. That's one of the things that attorney generals can do, because we have equitable power that the court can issue based on equity, in terms of disgorgement and taking certain benefits that scam artists have obtained.
okay. Mr. Flato?
Richard Flatto, Community Board 3. Thank you for your presentation. Notary publics are an important part of recording deeds, and also they're required for a lot of other documents. And right now, under the current system, it's very easy for people to get the information about notaries. I don't want to go into the details, but you can go online, basically. Has the Attorney General's office thought about having some additional regulations to protect the integrity and security of notaries?
Thank you. That was a great. It's certainly a big concern for us in terms of certain, and there was mentioning about public documents and information in terms of the information that's on a deed, because sometimes through the course of our investigations, there are deeds that are used, and you see the entire, notary stamp and with the notary number, and there's been cases where, individuals have obtained notary stamps online. So it's so many different ways that scam artists can fool people. So it's, legislation is definitely something that that the Attorney General's office is important. It's an important role, but enforcement of, not just the notary. If there are notary publics that are engaging in fraud, we're going to go after them if we have evidence against them. However, it could be also the lawyers. It could also be other business owners who are, obtaining even more of a benefit. You know, a notary stamp is what, $2 they charge for a notary to notarize something, and it's certainly a concern for us, and we're still working on that. So if you have any particular legislation to share, we would be happy to read it.
Okay. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Okay. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
All right, our second item tonight is we're going to have representatives from NYC Mesh. Would like to welcome Scott and Shea, if she's available. Shay, Molly, to come up and do a presentation for us. All right.
Do I go like this? Cool. Cool. Hi. My name is Shay, and this is Scott. We're volunteers with the New York City Mesh Network. If you have ever heard of a mesh network, it's probably been in resilience planning work or city planning. It's an alternative network that can be used in a lot of different ways. So the New York City Mesh is a community-owned network that provides low-cost, fast internet service to individuals, businesses, offices, housing projects. We have a ton of different partners we'll go over in a second. And our mission is to create an open, resilient, and neutral network that's accessible and affordable to all New Yorkers. So to go in a little bit more on that, we offer a viable alternative to your typical ISP. That could be Optimum, that could be Verizon, that could be Time Warner. Most people have had terrible experiences with a lot of these or some of these providers at some point in their life. So we are offering an alternative where you can have fast home internet service at a fraction of the cost. It's a $20 a month suggested donation, and we also offer building-wide services, which we would have to provide a quote for. It's a much more involved install. We are a not-for-profit initiative of the Internet Society of New York, which is a 501c3, and the Internet Society of New York has over 20 years of operations operating in New York City. So why would you be looking potentially for an alternative internet service provider? One is cost. We believe the internet is for everyone. We offer a sliding scale, donation-based access to the internet. Our members, as soon as you start paying your dues or have an installed node, you become a member of this cooperatively owned network. Also differing from your typical internet service provider, we are a neutral network that is cares about your privacy. So no one is ever watching the activity on your broadband or anything that you could be doing online. We're not monitoring. A lot of internet service providers also claim that they are not, but there's no regulation about that currently. So again, in that same vein of neutrality, we do not block, slow, or otherwise manipulate your connection. And in that regard, we've seen a huge surge in interest in Mesh Network, New York City Mesh Network, as well as others, after the net neutrality deregulation of 2018. Also, it's a community service. So a great experience that we've had in the Mesh Network is that we are growing rapidly, which means that you get to meet real people who are accessing the same service as you. We have meetups, and you talk to a real person who comes and installs your internet for you. The service requests are accessed by real people. All three of us here today are install members, so if you're like in my neighborhood and your Wi-Fi is down, like I might be one of the people who volunteers to come and check on it for you, as opposed to sitting on hold for hours and then maybe getting an installation fixed from someone else over an 8-hour window. You know how it is. And as I mentioned before, we're also popular in resilience planning situations. So when Sandy went down, or when Sandy happened here in New York, a lot of people no longer had access to Wi-Fi. In that situation, a lot of mesh network initiatives were able to help get places back up and running. Red Hook Initiative is also a mesh network. I also am aware that the New Orleans downtown was basically rebuilt by a mesh network. When they had to have all those construction sites there, those construction sites need Wi-Fi. That Wi-Fi is not going to be underground if everything is flooded. And so the services that we provide with this alternative network are great in the short term because they give you real access right now affordably, but they're also really good in the long term when you think about what a city may need in an emergency situation. So as I mentioned, after the net neutrality deregulation, we started growing really fast. And that's actually when I joined Mesh also, due to my interest in net neutrality. And we're actually now over 300 nodes, and that is only going to grow. We have a huge interest, and at this point, the installs that we're doing are super strategic to make sure that we can grow the network in as sustainable a way as possible. If you look at this map, these are all the nodes we currently have. So you'll see that downtown Manhattan and north central Brooklyn are getting a lot of nodes. Oh yeah. Yeah, and if you look down here, we have a new supernode down there, so this area should grow rapidly. There's a lot of interest down there. The interest looks like this. So all the gray nodes are potential nodes. Those are people who have heard about us, signed up, and would be interested in joining this network. All of these people could be using the same safe, affordable, community-owned Wi-Fi. The other thing that differentiates us from your typical internet service provider is that when you become a member of the New York City Mesh Network, you own your install. You own that service within your house. The installs that we do are, again, with real people. We come with the equipment, we show you how we're setting it up, and then the cost is $160 per node without financial assistance. We do offer financial assistance, and we have grants and partnerships going on to build out that sort of access in spaces that are beneficial to everyone. That covers the outdoor router, the indoor router, mounting equipment and cabling, as well as the install team's expenses, which is hardware and making sure your house is cleaned up after. For building-wide installs, we do fiber install. It's leased, and any equipment is owned by the building. Support can be structured in many ways depending on the building's needs, which we'll go over in a second. So if you've ever had the experience of waiting for someone from an internet company to come and install stuff in your house, and then you don't really know what's going on or where it's coming from, and they don't really participate with you in the process of having this service in your house, that can be really frustrating, and we've tried to fix that. So when you have an install member come to your house, we ask you what is going to be the most convenient. It's your home. We want to make sure that you're happy with how this is going to work for you.
So my name's Scott again. I'm a volunteer along with Shay. I just wanted to add a couple things to what she had noted earlier, and primarily it's just to give a bit of context about where a lot of us are coming from. As many of you may know, New York City, 30% of people in New York City don't have a home internet connection. And we're trying to tackle exactly that population, because we're thinking very critically that all folks in New York should have access to the internet at home if they decided that they would like that. As many of you know, it's essential for anything from getting a job to being able to do homework to simply keeping up with what's going on in our city. And so I'll just add that we're basically, to give context of how our network operates, we're a series of mostly rooftop-mounted wireless nodes. So it's small antennas about this big that are planted on top of folks' rooftops when and where we can access them. In some cases, that can be a large development, and I'll get into some of this later, but usually that's how we can kind of access apartments or units or buildings. And so we have a number of current projects And our projects really run the whole gamut of anyone who's interested. We're generally interested in partnering with because it provides us an opportunity to both serve folks who are interested in having access on internet access that's neutral, that's accessible about joining our community, but also in many cases, as is this case, for example, it's a large building that we can actually put an antenna on top of the roof and then use that as a regional hub to be able to provide high-speed internet access wirelessly to surrounding neighbors. So in this case, this is a project that we're working on with the Rivington Hotel in Manhattan. It's certainly providing a benefit to users of Rivington Hotel, but at the same time that it's doing that, it's allowing, I think we're connected, about 50 buildings around it are actually getting served that. So residents that are surrounding the area are really benefiting from these kinds of projects. Another one certainly is, this is just kind of an example of a larger project that we're doing in construction areas, but we're also in Saratoga Village in Brownsville. We have a partnership with Block Power, which is doing some work on monitoring heat sensors in the building. We partnered with them. They needed some connectivity to be able to operate these sensors inside of the building. We said, great, we'd love to be able to partner with you. We'd love to make sure that your sensors are operating and working in the building. But while we're here, we really believe that all people should have access online if they so desire. So we're going to open up a free Wi-Fi network throughout the building that anybody can access. So in Saratoga Village, on a number of the floors, as well as the surrounding grounds, almost as far as the subway station, there is a free and open network that's entirely neutral, not collecting data. You don't have to enter your email like Link NYC to be able to sign up. It's just there. You turn on your phone or a home computer and you're able to access it. We partnered with St. Francis School on Eastern Parkway to be able to get them a fiber connection and actually have an antenna on top of that rooftop that we're building off of right now to be able to serve folks in Crown Heights in that area. We recently just started a partnership with Riseborough, which has about nearly, I think they're doing management of nearly 150 buildings around primarily Brooklyn, but throughout the city. We started a small pilot project with them to be able to provide service to their youth center in Bushwick. We put a small antenna on top of their roof. Now they're getting high-speed internet that we were able to open up for students or after school to be able to use after school on their phones or whatever it is, as well as adults in their GED program. And we're really looking to be able to expand that partnership and be able to connect entire buildings or others. So that you kind of get an idea of the range of what so you can visually see what an antenna looks like on a rooftop. It's anywhere from some of these larger antennas, which are on top of the Verizon building in Lower Manhattan. Those are powerful antennas, obviously. They range to some of these that are even smaller. And then an individual's home antenna is usually no bigger than about that. So here's, as Shay was mentioning, we're entirely volunteers. People show up because they believe that everybody in New York City should have a free and open or low-cost access to the internet. So these are a number, you can see Shay even over there. These are a number of folks, and this is essentially what we do. And so here's another just nice photo of volunteers on top of rooftops around New York trying to connect folks online. So thanks so much. We'd love to be able to share more information about what we do, and we have lots of materials that I'd be happy to kind of follow up with, or we'd be happy to talk with anybody after this meeting, but I'm more than happy to open it up for questions now.
All right, thank you both. All right, I'll take questions here. Work my way around. All right, Teresa?
Teresa Scavo, Community Board 15. I am lost. You are volunteers. Who owns the company? Who gets the hardware for the installs? Who accepts the $20 a month that you said is a subscription? Wasn't it $20?
$0 to $20 is the contribution that we ask. Suggested donation.
Who gets the money and who puts it in a bank? Who writes the checks?
Sure. So we're a nonprofit. Right now, we're fiscally sponsored by the Internet Society of New York, which is what Shay was mentioning earlier, which is a nonprofit that's been operating in the city for 20 years. We're now in the process of registering as our own nonprofit, our own 501c3 in the city. We are, as I mentioned, entirely still run by volunteers. So when $20 gets purchased, is put in a bank account that is within the nonprofit structure. It is a donation for all intents and purposes to the organization, and that's managed by dedicated volunteers who care about it. I mean, for the most part, for example, for a home install, when we're doing that, that fee is really just for the purchase of equipment. It costs, these small antennas cost, and a home router costs somewhere around $110, $120, and then for some of the time of the people stopping by. But we're a nonprofit organization, and so you know, think of ourselves very much as a service provider here in the city.
Okay.
To clarify, the who answers, oh, sorry, just to clarify the who gets the check, it's all online. So it just goes directly into a bank account.
Hi, Ethel Tyus with Community Board 8. This is a great idea.
Ethel,
Thank you.
speak in the microphone, please.
This is a great idea. Thank you very much. What happens when the system goes down, when the client loses its connection? Who comes to do the repair? That's one. And my other question is, what is the average speed of the connection?
Regarding who does a repair, there's a number of ways that we have for folks to be able to reach out. We have neighborhood kind of response teams that are volunteers for folks that really try to show up at somebody's home pretty much immediately within the day, that day, to be able to fix what's going on. Oftentimes, problems can be solved entirely remotely without anybody showing up to somebody's house. And we have a number of kind of ways that I'd be happy to talk with you a bit more about how to reach out and form that kind of contact. So it's anything from sending an email, contacting us through our online community, or placing a phone call. We typically, it does obviously happen, as with anybody, that the network goes down. We have full network monitoring, so we often know before you will that your internet is down and can actually get focused on trying to fix it before you may even be aware that there's a problem. But again, that's entirely run by volunteers. We have anywhere from 50 to 100 kind of active volunteers that are involved in this space, doing that kind of work every day to try and make sure that folks are connected. And then with respect to speeds, it does vary based on your location on our network. Since it's kind of wireless, you can imagine that distances and line of sight, and there's a whole host of things that can impact what your speeds are. I think our average speed is somewhere around 60, 50, somewhere in that range, 50 down, 10 to 20 up. So it's certainly competitive with the offerings of many ISPs in the city. We don't often get too many complaints regarding speed. It is often more than adequate for somebody to be able to have multiple devices, streaming movies online, and doing the kind of basic functionality that you'd need for home internet.
Okay, I have to point out, you said that initially there was no network monitoring.
Sorry?
Can you use the mic, please?
Initially, you said there was no network monitoring, so it's an interesting.
Oh, sure.
flip on whether or not monitoring is done, but.
So we don't monitor any traffic that travels over the network. It's simply basically whether a device is on or not. So we basically send a small bit of information every I think it's like 10 minutes or something like that. But basically a bit of information is sent to a router at home. If the router responds saying, yes, I'm awake, then that means that it's operating. If that doesn't occur, then we can try to troubleshoot from there and work with whoever owns it to make sure that we're meeting what their expectation is. But we're not actually monitoring any of the kind of traffic that's traveling over that, looking at how they're using it or anything like that. We're very kind of radically supportive of net neutrality and really, really oppose any efforts to try to monitor data.
Thank you.
Hi, Jenice Morgan, Community Board 16. With regards to the installation, are the lines, are they connected to larger internet carriers, just in terms of, I guess, capacity? Meaning, like, you know how Con Ed, there's smaller energy companies, but they still have some connection to Con Ed. You know, like some of the fees still go to Con Ed, whereas a portion of the fees go to the smaller energy company that you may have to, that you may be allowed to subscribe with, but a portion of it is still managed and, I guess, controlled by the larger company. Is there something similar with like Verizon or Optimum?
No, so we operate in it's what's called an internet exchange point, which is out of the Verizon building in Lower Manhattan, which is kind of the beginning point for our network, and that's what's called an internet exchange point, meaning that that's basically where we tap directly into the backbone of the internet that you often hear about. Verizon and others are also operating in that same building, using server space and basically plugging into the backbone at the same place that we are. So we run all our traffic directly through that point so that we're not contracting with Verizon, so to speak, to be able to provide bandwidth and be able to navigate that. So we do have some, it can get quite technical exactly how all of the network sharing does occur and work, but but for all intents and purposes, we technically operate entirely our own network that's not dependent on Verizon. So there's no money kind of going back through to a different ISP, and nor is there a time that traffic is specifically kind of being passed through their network in a way that they would be able to monitor or use it.
Okay. And then in terms of wanting to subscribe, can multiple people in a household, because now Cablevision or Verizon, if you don't want to share a router with someone, you can order your own and have your own, so you're not sharing the speed. Can you do the same with your service, or is there like a limit to how many antennas can be installed in like a household or something?
It may vary. It varies depending, I guess, on the number of routers that you'd need in a building, exactly the kind of way that we would approach a situation like that. But certainly we're in buildings where multiple people have their own routers, and you have a router in your apartment and somebody else in their apartment, or have multiple routers throughout. So that is not impossible to do, and we do it quite regularly. In fact, we certainly encourage more people in one building to be able to use it, because that is easier for us, easier to be able to kind of maintain and work. And once we're connected in a building, we're in that building. So we certainly support more folks trying to connect to be able to get online. We also kind of operate a number of, we didn't mention, but a number of open Wi-Fi networks throughout the city that are just community Wi-Fi networks that are available on, sometimes when you're walking down the street, you may notice us, and that's kind of just mean we have a nearby antenna. So I'll add that as well.
And then also on that front, if you had like a house, say, I've done a couple of installs now where we're installing for someone who owns their home and it's like a 3-story brownstone or something. They are, yeah, I know, right? They are encouraged to have more than one router if they want to. We're also capable of repurposing routers that you already have in your home that may be more powerful than ours. Usually we can get those to connect as well. So whether it's in your own home or throughout your whole building, more than one router is definitely encouraged.
Okay, all right, CB 14 and 6. I didn't see.
Ed Powell, CB 14. Who qualifies for the no-cost service?
It's entirely based on the honor system, and we have no qualification requirement. We encourage everybody to pay what they are able to afford, and we leave that up to individuals to be the best judge of.
Go ahead, Joy.
Okay. So are there any paid staff persons that do the technical work? Or are you saying everyone that does the technical work is volunteers?
That as well. Everyone in the network are volunteers.
Okay, are they volunteers because they're receiving the service and that's the way they're giving back?
In some cases, they are receiving the service. In many cases, they are working for maybe a tech firm in the city or somebody else and has decided that this is how they would like to spend their time to be able to give back to their community.
Okay, so initial from the time when the person initially signs up and they say, okay, I want this.
Mm-hmm.
The person there's going to be someone that comes there to determine if it should be an antenna or wires, physical wires.
So I'm happy to kind of talk through what that process looks like. So we have a website that I absolutely encourage everybody to check out. It's www.nycmesh.net. And we can happy to hang out and pass out some cards to be able to get in contact with us individually afterwards as well. But the process basically looks like somebody goes on our website, signs up, basically just enters their name and address, I believe is all the information that we ask of somebody. Then we will try to have an exchange with the person to make sure that we can actually access and provide them with service. Assuming that, and that's kind of done digitally online, assuming that we believe that that's possible, a install leader is what we kind of call them, and that's the three of us, that's many other folks. We'll do a site survey, come out to somebody's house, say hi, stop by, do a brief site survey to see if, to actually verify that it's possible to be able to get a connection there. And then from there, in conversation with whoever's living in the unit, we'll discuss whether they want to proceed with the install. And from there, it's basically connecting a small antenna someplace, either, in some cases, it's outside of a window. It's often roof access is usually necessary to some extent. That's why, again, it's often easier to be able to have multiple folks in one building, because that can make it easier. But it's not much different than, I mean, if you go onto any rooftop in New York City, you'll see 30 dish satellite setups and a bunch of different things. And so ours is certainly smaller than that, but it's not significantly different. In about 2.5 hours, we'll have somebody connected and online, and then we ask them to contribute $20 a month if they're able to afford that, and they'll hopefully contribute because they want to be a part of the network and can afford it, and that's, they reach out if there's a problem, and that's about the end of it.
Okay.
Well, I have other questions, but I'll ask offline.
Sure,
Thank you.
absolutely, yeah.
Joy, if you real quick can identify yourself for the record, for the minute.
Joy Simmons from the office of Councilmember Inez Barron.
Okay, thank you. So I have CB6, and then I'm going to work my way back around, okay?
Sorry, Rachel Freeman from CB6. So if you could just elaborate a little more about what those requirements are that people would need in order to, I guess, qualify. Because I know, like, for instance, a lot of people, at least in my neighborhood, don't have access necessarily individually to their rooftops. It would be like violations of their lease to do something like that. So how would that work
Sure.
if they're interested in that?
Sure. So I think Scott's going back to the map. What we require, and it is all, again, detailed on the website, it's very clear when you're setting up for the process. In order to be able to link up to the network, you need to have line of sight to one of the major dark blue nodes or the light blue nodes. The fiber installs are slightly different, but at the same time, every red dot that you see there with the blue line, that's its line of sight to its main connection. So you don't necessarily have to be on your roof to have that. I have it from my window, but most people have a better line of sight if it is from their roof. You want to elaborate?
No, I think that, yeah. And so every day we're installing new nodes and hubs and antennas throughout the city, and so our real goal is to have that coverage, but obviously we are a work in progress and really try to reach out to get everywhere we can. But it's meetings like this that kind of provide the opportunity to be able to get to know folks. A big priority of ours is trying to collaborate and work with the city. We actually have a tech demo in the Manhattan Borough President's office. Their office is on the Mesh network, and their community board meetings in the building are on our network. And so we're often trying to always find opportunities to work with the city, other property owners, others to be able to put antennas on rooftops, and that's a big area that we'd love your help from anybody who's interested to be able to build those kind of collaborations and connections to be able to get a presence in a community to be able to expand from there.
Okay. My sales office?
Tyler Reynolds from Councilmember Mazel's office. If it is a free shareable Wi-Fi, what type of security measures are in place to protect your users from hackers?
It's encrypted. Everything is fully encrypted. So that means that no one is monitoring the activity the way that you might expect a for-profit ISP, so we're not going to choke your access. We also don't have access to anything that you're doing on that network, and additionally, the encryption is set up so that no one else can just access your network while you're on it and take your information as you're providing it.
All right.
Does that
Yeah,
clarify?
yeah.
Encrypted is the key phrase there.
How you doing? Joshua Brown, CB4. I want to say this is a great idea. I just want to ask about education and communication with the community, because I fully understand that net neutrality means that my ISP can make certain websites faster or slower, but I don't think the general community fully understands what that is. And are you working with any other organizations? Because this is a serious issue that will affect our future, just in terms of how your internet provider, whether you're liberal or conservative, they can slow down that on websites traffic.
We're definitely interested in education. That is not entirely what we have been always set up to do, but we strongly believe that our community is strong. Our community is stronger when everybody has the technical expertise to understand how to use it. So we do offer programming like Networking 101 to try to help people understand how does our network work, and then be able to train folks to be able to be a volunteer or just knowledgeable about how their home internet connection works. For example, I don't have a tech background, I have a policy background, so I get net neutrality, but I couldn't tell you a year ago, I couldn't tell you anything about how the network actually operates. So we try to focus on that kind of education that we really see as being priorities for the organization. But that's the reason also that we're making a concerted effort to do presentations just like this, to be able to build connections with community organizations, with community boards or others, to be able to try to form the partnerships that could allow for that to occur.
And we are also working with the Citizens Committee for New York City. We've received a grant to partner with an activist group called Unglitch that focuses specifically on education for tech policy. And the grant that we received from the Citizens Committee will be specific to doing free mesh network installs in art spaces around the Brooklyn area. So that way we can continue programming with those spaces and rely on the outreach in the communities of those spaces to help build that education, especially because net neutrality seems to be particularly poignant to creative communities and public spaces.
Got it. All right, Councilmember Samuel's office.
Hi, Kim Robinson from Councilmember Samuel's office. Just to go piggyback on what the gentleman said, maybe I didn't get it, but currently right now, if, let's say my siblings come to visit, they ask me for my password. Are you saying that should someone get it, that it's would be no longer an issue?
So I hope I'm understanding the question correctly. So our network essentially your home connection really wouldn't operate differently than how it probably does now, assuming you have a home connection. So you'd have a router at home that has a password like you likely do, and a fun network name that you decided on, and you can change all of that, and that you'd have that ability to be able to do. We also do operate some open networks throughout the city in areas that are frequented by the public or used by the public in the same way that Link NYC may do so.
Okay. Any other questions from the group? Okay, I'm going to ask one question. So as you alluded earlier, you guys are a volunteer group, so I'm curious on the high rises. Do you guys work with the property management to go up to the high rise? I'm not sure in terms of your tallest building, but just some of the pictures you've shown from the Manhattan.
Sure, that's exactly. We often collaborate with building managers. We have a real goal of ours is to be doing a lot more work with tenants and tenant associations to try to build those partnerships much closer. But usually when it comes to being able to get access to a building, it comes down to being able to work with a building manager. But we'd like to be entering buildings on as much of a partnership basis as we can. Again, our real thought process is, as I was mentioning, that we're all stronger and better off when we have the knowledge and ability to be able to connect ourselves. And so in some cases, for example, in Saratoga Village, where we're at the ideal kind of situation that we we all strive to have is that we could connect entire buildings like that, provide some of the technical training it takes to be able to maintain a building like that, and that any kind of donations or funds that came from that building of folks who were getting access, signing up online, actually would no longer be going to us at all, but would actually just be staying within a building to be able to provide support or other sorts of expertise on site. So that's our kind of model and how we'd really like to be able to grow.
All right, okay. Well, thank you both,
Yeah.
Scott
Thank
and
you,
Jay.
thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to open up any questions, comments for the board, any old business, new business? No? All right, perfect, great. Seeing none, just to let everyone know, our next, somebody, okay.
Yes, this is Barrett from Community Board 17. I'd just like to say to everyone, this will be my last meeting on the Borough Board because my term ended as of June 30th. So I have to thank everyone for the knowledge that I have obtained, and I'll be around, but I'll be part of the board staff. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any more? Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. All right, moved by Community Board 14, second by CB 15. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. All right. Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Meeting adjourned. Our next meeting is Tuesday, July 2nd. Just to let everyone, Tuesday, July 2nd at 6 p.m. will be the next Borough Board meeting. All right. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you.